The vast emptiness of space stretched out beyond the transparent dome of the human colony. Soft green gardens filled with carefully cultivated plants created a small patch of life on the distant planet. Children played, their laughter echoing through the carefully maintained environment. Una Park was 7 years old. She wore a bright blue jumpsuit and ran between the garden plants, her dark hair bouncing with each step. Her father, Jay Park, watched her from a nearby observation point. He was a former military strategist who now worked as a planetary development coordinator, helping to establish human settlements in this remote star system. The colony was peaceful. Settlers had spent years transforming this harsh world into a livable environment. Hydroponic gardens, atmospheric processors, and protective domes made survival possible. Una represented the future, the first generation of children born in these new worlds. No one expected the Zorn Imperial Patrol that day. Their massive warship appeared without warning, blocking out the distant stars. Massive energy signatures indicated weapons charging. Jay's communication system suddenly erupted with emergency alerts. Unidentified vessel approaching. Potential hostile intent, the colony's automated defense system announced. Jay's military training kicked in instantly. He looked toward Una, who was still playing among the plants. "Una, come here now," he shouted, his voice urgent and sharp. But children rarely listen immediately. Una continued playing, picking a small flower and turning toward her father, with a bright smile. The Zorn soldiers moved with ruthless efficiency. Their massive armored forms broke through the colony's outer perimeter. Energy weapons hummed with destructive potential. They weren't here to negotiate or communicate. They were here to demonstrate power. Plasma bolts erupted through the protective dome. The carefully maintained ecosystem began to destabilize. Atmosphere started leaking. Plants wilted instantly under the extreme temperature changes. Jay ran toward Una, his heart racing. He knew he might not reach her in time. The soldiers were moving quickly, systematically destroying everything in their path. Time seemed to slow down. Una turned, her small face confused by the sudden chaos. A plasma bolt struck near her position. The bright energy wave consumed everything in its path. When the burst cleared, Una was gone. Jay's scream of rage and grief echoed through the dying colony. His daughter, his only child, had been nothing more than a casual target for these alien invaders. A life erased without thought or consideration. The Zorn soldiers continued their systematic destruction. They recorded the colony's elimination as a routine pacification operation. Another minor settlement neutralized. Another potential resistance point removed. They did not understand what they had just done. They did not realize that this single act would transform humanity's approach to galactic exploration and conflict. They could not comprehend the fury. They had just unleashed. Jay Park stood among the ruins, surrounded by destroyed gardens and shattered dreams. His hands clenched into tight fists. Tears mixed with the dust of the destroyed colony. In that moment, something changed. Not just for Jay, but for all of humanity. The recording of Una's final moments would spread across human communication networks. Every settlement, every space station, every planetary government would see what happened. The image of a child destroyed would become a rallying cry. The Zorn Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had transformed grief into something far more dangerous, a unified human resolve for complete and total vengeance. Jay looked up at the stars, his eyes no longer showing sadness. They now burned with a cold, calculated determination. Someone would pay for what happened here today. The entire Zorn Empire would understand the consequences of their actions. The colony was silent now. Only the wind moved through the destroyed gardens. A single blue jumpsuit lay torn and burned, a small reminder of the life that had been so casually erased. Humanity's response was coming, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The moment Una's final moments were broadcast, Earth transformed. In government centers, military installations, and research facilities, a single emotion burned bright: revenge. The United Earth Council gathered within minutes. Holographic displays showed the destruction of the distant colony. Each representative, watched Yuna's final moments repeatedly. No one spoke. No one needed to. J. Park stood before the council, his military uniform crisp, his eyes cold. He had been a strategic planner before retiring to colonial development. Now he would become something else entirely. They killed a child, he said simply. Not a soldier, not a threat, a child. Global communication networks buzzed with anger. Social platforms, military channels, scientific research groups, all united in a way never seen before. Humanity had always been divided. Today they became something else. Hidden technology began to wake up. Underground facilities that had been dormant for decades suddenly hummed with energy. Quantum computers that governments had kept secret started processing complex strategies. Weapon systems buried deep beneath mountains and ocean floors powered up silently. Military research teams that had been working on experimental technologies accelerated their programs. Stealth technologies, advanced propulsion systems, and weapon designs that had been considered too dangerous were now being fast-tracked. The global economy shifted. Resources that were once used for peaceful development now channeled into military preparation. Manufacturing centers that produced consumer goods transformed overnight into weapon production facilities. Space agencies that had been focused on exploration now prepared for war. Satellites were repositioned, communication networks were encrypted. Every human settlement was put on high alert. Scientists who had been studying alien technologies suddenly found unlimited funding. Research projects that had been theoretical became practical. Reverse engineering alien technology became a global priority. Artificial intelligence systems, which had been restricted and controlled, were given unprecedented access. They began analyzing the Zorn Empire's communication patterns, technological capabilities, and potential weaknesses. No one discussed negotiation. No one talked about diplomacy. The message was clear. Total response was the only acceptable outcome. Earth's military began mobilizing in ways never seen before. Soldiers who had been training for theoretical conflicts now prepared for a very real war. Training simulations became brutal and precise. Every scenario focused on one goal: complete destruction of the Zorn Empire. Genetic research teams started developing enhanced human capabilities, not just for soldiers, but for entire populations. Genetic modifications that could improve human survival in extreme conditions were fast-tracked. Space construction yards that had been building research vessels now constructed warships. Design principles changed from exploration to combat. Every ship would be a potential weapon. Intelligence agencies around the world shared information without hesitation. Old rivalries disappeared. National boundaries became meaningless. The only identity that mattered was human. J. Park watched these preparations with a calm determination. He knew what was coming. The Zorn Empire had made a mistake they could not understand. They had turned human grief into a weapon more dangerous than any technology. Communication networks began spreading Yuna's story, not as a tragedy, but as a call to action. Her image became a symbol. Every human would remember her name. Every human would understand what needed to be done. The preparation was not just about military action. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity would no longer be seen as a young, weak species. They would become something else entirely. Weeks passed. The preparations continued. Every resource, every technology, every human capability was focused on a single objective. The Zorn Empire would learn a brutal lesson. They had killed a child. Now they would face the consequences. Earth was ready, and what was coming would change the galaxy forever. The first human strike was silent and precise. No massive explosions, no dramatic announcements, just pure, calculated destruction. Sung Kim led the special operations team. His team had spent months planning every single detail. Each target was selected with surgical precision. They would not just attack. They would dismantle the Zorn Empire's entire infrastructure. Communication networks went dark first. Massive, quantum disruption signals targeted Zorn relay stations. Billions of communication channels suddenly stopped working. The Zorn military discovered their command structures were completely isolated. Stealth ships designed using technologies never before seen moved through space like ghosts. They were invisible to traditional scanning methods. Each ship carried specialized weapons that could disable entire space stations without creating massive explosions. The first wave targeted critical infrastructure, power generation centers, communication relays, military supply depots. Each location was hit simultaneously across multiple star systems. The Zorn never saw it coming. Orbital platforms that had monitored human settlements for years suddenly became inactive. Their advanced tracking systems mysteriously failed. Navigation computers displayed impossible data. Complete confusion spread through the Zorn military ranks. Sung Kim watched the operation from a hidden command center. Holographic displays showed each successful strike. No emotional celebration. Just cold, professional execution of a plan. Artificial intelligence systems calculated every movement. They predicted Zorn responses before the alien military could even understand what was happening. Human technology had reached a level of sophistication that seemed almost magical. Psychological warfare played a critical role. Each strike was designed to create maximum fear. The humans were not just attacking physical infrastructure. They were destroying the Zorn Empire's sense of security. Small robotic devices infiltrated Zorn military bases. They didn't destroy. They recorded. They gathered intelligence. They transmitted information back to human command centers. The Zorn discovered their most secure facilities were completely compromised. Energy weapon signatures that had once destroyed. Human colonies were now turned against their creators. Precision strikes disabled entire fleet formations. Zorn warships found their advanced technologies suddenly useless. Research facilities that had studied human colonies now became primary targets. Every piece of information the Zorn had collected was systematically erased. They would learn nothing more about humanity. Economic centers across Zorn-controlled systems suddenly found their financial networks collapsing. Credits disappeared. Trade routes became impossible. The economic impact was devastating. Planetary defense systems were turned against their own creators. Automated weapons platforms now targeted Zorn military installations. The Empire's own technologies became its greatest weakness. Sung Kim understood something fundamental. This was not just about revenge. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity would not be a victim again. The strikes continued, methodical, precise, emotionless. Each target was selected not just for its military value, but for its psychological impact. Zorn military commanders discovered they could not communicate, could not coordinate, could not understand what was happening. Their entire command structure was systematically dismantled. Smaller alien species that had been oppressed by the Zorn Empire watched in amazement. Humanity was doing what no one had ever done before. They were fighting back, and they were winning. Information warfare became as important as physical attacks. Human intelligence systems spread carefully designed messages. They created doubt. They destroyed morale. They showed the Zorn Empire how vulnerable they truly were. Days passed. The human strikes continued. No massive battles. No dramatic confrontations. Just systematic, precise destruction. The Zorn Empire was bleeding, and they didn't even understand how or why. Sung Kim allowed himself a small smile. The first phase was complete. And this was just the beginning. The Zorn Empire's collapse began attracting attention across the galaxy. Species that had suffered under imperial rule watched humanity's precise strikes with growing interest. Hyun Lee, Earth's chief diplomatic strategist, understood something critical. This conflict was about more than revenge. It was an opportunity to reshape galactic power structures. Small alien civilizations that had been crushed by Zorn expansion started sending encrypted communications. They weren't offering direct military support. They were sharing information. Detailed star charts, military communications records, weakness analysis of Zorn defense systems. The Creel, a species of silicon-based life forms, had been enslaved by the Zorn for generations. Their communication networks provided critical intelligence about Imperial supply routes. Massive vulnerabilities that humans could exploit became suddenly visible. Another species, the Vora, aquatic beings from a water-rich planet, had developed advanced stealth technologies to survive Zorn oppression. They shared technical specifications that complemented human engineering capabilities. Underground resistance movements on Zorn-controlled worlds began rising. Small rebellions that had been crushed before now found new courage. Humanity's strikes gave them hope. They started disrupting local Zorn military operations from within. Economic networks across multiple star systems started shifting. Trading, partnerships that had existed for centuries began collapsing. The Zorn Empire's economic stranglehold was breaking. Hyun-Lee worked carefully. This was not traditional diplomacy. This was strategic relationship building. Each interaction was calculated. Each communication designed to create long-term alliances. Artificial intelligence systems helped analyze potential alliance opportunities. They identified species with compatible technological approaches. They predicted potential cooperation scenarios with mathematical precision. Some alien civilizations were hesitant. Humanity was a new species. Their methods were unpredictable, but the results were impossible to ignore. The Zorn Empire's response was becoming increasingly desperate. Military commanders discovered their communication networks were compromised. Their supply lines were disrupted. Their planetary defense systems were turning against them. Smaller species that had been considered insignificant suddenly found themselves with opportunities. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Zorn were now open. Economic possibilities emerged that had never existed before. Technological exchanges began happening quietly. Human researchers shared adaptive technologies. Alien civilizations provided unique scientific perspectives. A new kind of galactic cooperation was emerging. Intelligence networks expanded. What started as a human revenge mission was transforming into a full-scale galactic liberation movement. Each species contributed something unique. The Vora provided stealth technologies. The Creel offered communication infiltration techniques. Humanity brought strategic planning and overwhelming technological adaptability. Hyun-Lee understood the complexity of what was happening. This was not just a war. This was a fundamental restructuring of galactic power dynamics. Military strategists on Earth monitored these developments carefully. Every new alliance, every shared piece of intelligence, brought them closer to their ultimate objective. The message was clear. The Zorn Empire's time was ending, and a new galactic order was emerging. Small rebellions became coordinated movements. Isolated resistance groups found each other. Communication networks that had been suppressed for generations suddenly came alive. Humanity had started this conflict because of one child's death. But it was becoming something much larger, a chance for fundamental change. Hyun-Lee looked at the constantly updating holographic displays. Potential alliance networks spread across star systems like complex neural networks. Each connection represented hope. Each relationship represented potential freedom. The Zorn Empire was discovering what happened when you underestimated an emerging species. They had killed a human child. Now they would face the consequences, and the galaxy was watching. The final assault began without traditional fanfare. No dramatic speeches, no grand declarations, just pure, calculated military precision. J. Park stood on the bridge of the flagship, a holographic image of Yuna floating beside him. His eyes reflected a calm that scared even his most experienced crew members. This was more than a military operation. This was a promise being fulfilled. Human ships moved like liquid metal through space. They were not just vessels. They were living weapons, each designed with technologies that seemed to defy known physical laws. Quantum drives allowed instantaneous repositioning. Adaptive shield systems could change frequencies faster than enemy weapons could target them. The Zorn homeworld appeared massive on the tactical displays. Massive city structures covered entire continents. Defensive platforms surrounded the planet, like a mechanical skin. For centuries, no species had even considered challenging this fortress world. Humanity would change that today. The first wave was not about destruction. It was about complete system disruption. Quantum communication viruses invaded every network. Military command structures collapsed from within. Defense systems began targeting their own installations. Smaller allied species played critical roles. The Creel provided infiltration algorithms. The Vora contributed stealth approach vectors. Each alien civilization contributed something unique to the assault. Massive energy weapons that humans had been developing in secret now powered up. These were not traditional weapons. They could disable entire planetary defense grids without creating massive physical destruction. Precision was the strategy. Zorn military commanders watched in horror as their most secure systems failed. Communication networks died. Navigation systems became useless. Their entire technological infrastructure crumbled without a single physical attack. J. Park's strategy was brutally simple. Remove the Zorn Empire's ability to function, not destroy their entire civilization. This was about teaching a lesson, not committing genocide. Planetary transportation networks stopped working. Economic systems collapsed. Military communication became impossible. The Zorn discovered they were completely isolated. Artificial intelligence systems guided every human movement. They calculated probabilities faster than biological brains could process. Each decision was mathematically perfect. The assault lasted hours, not days. No massive explosions, no dramatic space battles, just systematic, precise technological warfare. Zorn leadership discovered they could not communicate, could not coordinate, could not understand what was happening. Their entire command structure was systematically dismantled. Smaller rebel groups on Zorn-controlled worlds rose simultaneously. Years of suppressed resistance suddenly found an opportunity. Local military installations were overwhelmed from within Hyunli. Coordinating diplomatic efforts ensured that post-conflict reconstruction was already planned. This was not about revenge. This was about creating a new galactic order. The holographic image of Yuna remained beside J. Park, a constant reminder of why this was happening. As systems failed, the Zorn leadership realized something terrifying. They had been defeated by a species they had considered insignificant. A civilization they had casually destroyed had just dismantled their entire imperial structure. Communication intercepts revealed total confusion among Zorn military ranks. Their most secure systems had become their greatest weakness. Everything they believed about their technological superiority was wrong. J. Park watched the tactical displays. No emotion, just cold, calculated completion of a mission. The Zorn Empire did not fall with massive explosions. It collapsed systematically. Each system failed precisely. Each network died methodically. By the time silence fell, the message was clear. Humanity was not a young, weak species to be ignored. They were a force that would reshape galactic dynamics. The holographic image of Yuna slowly faded. Her purpose was complete. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same again.